Mind Body Life show hosted by Frederick Entenmann on Global Voice Radio on Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern. During his show, Mind Body Life founder and best-selling author Frederick Entenmann investigates the little-known insights and daily methods used to create explosive life transformations and transitions with those that have risen from struggle and ascended to greatness. Here is your Mind Body Life host, Frederick Entenmann.
Welcome to the Mind Body Life show. I'm your host, Frederick Entenmann. This is episode 25. I'm a former professional athlete, a best-selling author of Surviving Sports in the Game of Life, a coach and consultant. I help professional athletes create lasting success outside of sports and win the game of life. I want to welcome you to episode 25. And this episode is going to be all about why slowing down provides the most benefits amongst this chaotic 21st century. And first and foremost, I want to start with just the word disease. We have more diseases nowadays that are, in my mind, rampant amongst just about everyone, and half of which I think are made up. Because what do you actually think of when you hear the word disease? If you take the word apart, you can start to really understand its true meaning. And if you're in a state of dis-ease, your body, mind, and your very spirit are in a state of dis. Dis means actually apart or separate, and ease means well-being. Disease is not simply something that suddenly attacks you out of thin air. That's a huge misconception. It's something that develops when your well-being is disrupted over time. We usually don't identify it until there's medical symptoms, which I have to say the propaganda is in full force, and has initiated such fear and anxiety within our very culture that most people don't even take time to take a step back and think about the very process that of what disease is and just how long it actually takes. But by the time disease actually sets in, the lack of well-being has probably already been around for a while. It just doesn't happen in a flash of a second. Oh, suddenly I have a disease. It's not how it works. So seeing disease from this perspective can help you more effectively address the chronic medical conditions that may affect you. And off the top of my head, the top 10 killers I can think of off the top of my head is obviously heart disease, completely preventable; stroke, preventable; cancer, preventable; diabetes, arthritis, obesity, respiratory issues, oral conditions. These are all preventable. About 91% of actual diseases are 100% preventable. That's the sad part of where we at this part of human history. For the most part, it actually takes years of practicing unhealthy behaviors to become ill, like lack of consistent exercise or smoking or drinking and poor eating choices, on and on. And at the root cause of this is really the lack of proper habits, of proper thinking, and just overall of living a victimhood, victimitis mindset and lifestyle. You're doing it to yourself. It's disease doesn't do it to you. You actually are creating the disease. This might sound a little cold-hearted, but nowadays most truth does, because we've been so conditioned. Of course, there are exceptions. I'm not leaving that out. I'm saying all in general, there are those born with a rare genetic disorder or struck down by a calamity through no fault of their own. Yes, that's true. But actually, if you do the research, the percentages are quite small, okay? And I have a truly compassionate heart for those type of circumstances. What I'm talking about are the millions of others who court disaster by creating the proper environment for disease to manifest and really affect the quality of their lives and other people's lives. And it's a big mystery to them because all of a sudden they're a victim. And if you know me by now, I'm all about awareness, speaking the truth, and getting people out of that victimhood mentality so you can create the best lifestyle in this time possible. Once disease or injury even has set in, there exists an even greater problem, okay? And that's prescription drugs. A multi-billion-dollar industry. Manufactured prescription drugs are more dangerous than illicit drugs. Deaths in the United States via prescription drugs have reached an all-time high. It's staggering. And I personally, as well as many others that I know that are my dear friends, vehemently oppose those drugs. And I really encourage everyone else to do the same. Even when taken as recommended, prescription and over-the-counter drugs that are meant to treat specific symptoms have side effects that cause actually more harm than good. And we've all been brainwashed and programmed by an industry that has made trillions of dollars by fooling individuals, family, your friends, neighbors into believing otherwise. And that's the type of awareness that constantly and consistently needs to be brought to attention. Almost 70% of Americans take at least one prescription drug, and then more than half take two. According to this research, I'm talking about research from the Mayo Clinic in Olmsted Medical Center, just up the road from me, a couple hours on the lake in Cleveland, you know? So what do I know about this problem? I actually know quite a lot. I can actually consider myself one of the foremost leading holistic experts in the world. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I have experienced the brainwashing amongst thousands and thousands of people firsthand. I've been well acquainted with the medical community since birth, actually, and that's where my journey started, for those that want to know. And for much of the first 30 years of my life, actually, you know, to start with, going back to the early 70s, I was born actually 2.5 months premature, and my mother and I had a near-death experience. So during my childhood, I was in and out of doctors' offices all the time. And over the years, doctors actually wanted to give me more drugs than I can count, you know? Thank goodness for my parents who declined over and over when pediatricians, white coats, wanted to pump my body full of mind-altering drugs like Ritalin and other experimental mind-warping drugs that cause, again, more long-term harm than good. And I actually have stories that fill a separate book on this topic, but the message I want to give you is ask questions, be skeptical. Don't give in to all the brainwashing propaganda out there. You have to understand the modern medical system is exactly that. It's a system designed to make trillions and trillions of dollars on your behalf at your expenditure. Prescription drugs are not the key to wellness, and they never have been. They will not take you where you want to go. So when you're, let's just say, a young athlete, disease might seem like a foreign concept. Overtraining and poor habits will catch up to you eventually. And it's important to take care of yourself while you're young, getting in the good habits, getting that awareness, getting the right mindset, the right soul set, the right everything from A through Z. You know, for athletes, the daily grind of training will add up to those millions of steps and jumps or hops, or swims or throws, whatever you are active in. And, you know, it goes without saying, your body will experience a lot of impact. Orthopedists, here's something also fascinating. Orthopedists nowadays have never seen so many joint replacements performed. And I truly believe this has to do with a combination of poor nutritional habits. And the thing is, if you caught my last podcast, 2 podcasts ago, I talked about the quality of food. Our soil has been depleted. It's actually filled in. You're not getting the same amount of vitamins and nutrients in our food anymore because the soil is disrupted. Our air is disrupted. And therefore, we can make the correlation that there has been an increased incidence of overtraining beginning at a young age because we're not getting that proper recovery. I'm commonly known for saying, I coined the phrase, a Porsche doesn't run on fast food. It's one of my personal favorite mottos. So burn this into your mind. A Porsche doesn't run on fast food. You would never put a poor fuel source into a prime 6-digit machine. So why dishonor the machine you live in and that you depend on for your very life source? You can't put garbage and sludge into your body and expect positive results. Eat great and you will feel great. It's that simple. Your performance, your wellness, vitality, and longevity are dependent upon your choices. They're your choices, no one else's. Taking personal accountability is actually growing up. We're not taught that in school. Taking personal accountability over your life and taking control in owning your choices is actually being an adult, not running from them, not escaping, not being a victim and pointing fingers and poor me. No, that's not it. That's not it. If you actually want to be thin and light and happy or all those things, which everyone always comes to me and asks me, oh my gosh, how do you do it? Because they're feeling slow or heavy or inflamed or moody. You know, take the first step and just be accountable for yourself. Decide today that you're going to be accountable for everything. And it starts from there. Then you can plan and eat according to exactly how you want to feel and look. It's always your choice at the end of the day. How you want to look, how you want to feel. You have the control. Remember, disease cannot exist in an alkaline state. I went over this about 3 or 4 podcasts ago. If you want to go back to that, I explain that more in detail. This was proven in the 1920s by Otto Wartburg out of Germany. And remember, again, disease cannot exist in an alkaline state. This has been proven for almost 100 years. So if you're suffering from any sort of disease, it's because essentially, to a great degree, your body is too acidic. You've got to balance your pH. That would be a huge step. So look into your alkaline diets. Things like juicing lemon and lime or celery is actually one way of doing it. Plus, they also contain anti-cancer compounds, so they'll fight cancer on 2 fronts. And what I mean by that is when you're in an alkalized state, you don't desire sweets also. So this strategy also helps with weight loss. And, you know, just going back to celery, in case you're wondering what celery, the chemical compounds in celery, for instance, you know, which you can start to learn about the foods that you're putting in your mouth instead of blindlessly feeding your emotions. This is also a huge step. Always know where your food sources come from and always know the benefits of what you are fueling your body. You have to take the steps to educate yourself. That's how you gain awareness. Chemical compounds in celery actually tell your nervous system to relax. It lowers blood pressure, balances your hormones, clears up your skin, as crazy as that sounds. It also benefits your kidneys. Amazing. That's just one example. I could go on and write a book about that alone. But speaking of performance and energy, I've never met an athlete who didn't want to have more energy. I've never met a CEO who didn't want more energy, or a mom or average Joe, anyone for that matter. The more energy you have stored up through your recovery processes, the better performance you're ultimately going to have. And when it comes down to the key moment in the game, or key moment, or just that executive decision, you're going to want to find your energy reserves when you reach for them, when it's crunch time. Energy is something that every athlete tries to maximize, especially professional athletes. That's what I deal with. If you're a CEO, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, or if you're an athlete or professional athlete, let's hook up. I will teach you how to maximize your energy if that's something you really want to do. For all of us, no matter what our circumstances, it is the one thing that makes us feel young and vibrant and alive. I recently wrote a chapter that was a #1 bestseller in Amazon called Wake Up, How to Live a Vibrant, Healthy Life. And I did a collaboration with Wim Hof, the Iceman, who knows a thing or two about energy as well. Now, the key to energy is actually slowing down and rest. Rest is the only scientifically proven way that the brain can actually repair itself. I'm not big into skimping sleep. After multiple decades of researching health, mind, body, soul, you name it, entrepreneurs or so-called leadership experts that are claiming you need to skimp on rest are selling out. This simply is not true. Rest, especially for an athlete, should last a minimum of 7 hours. It's going to repair your brain. It's going to repair your entire body, reset your nervous system, which basically gets beat up every single day, and your hormonal, your endocrine system. So everyone is different. Yes, most athletes actually need more than 7 hours of sleep to fully recuperate, according to modern research. And you need to plan for this. This is essential stuff. It's so common to encounter athletes who don't ever learn to do this. And they wonder why they're consistently sore, feel burnout, and have to incur these injuries. Invariably on the nights that athletes in general don't get enough rest, or CEOs that are stressed and they can't sleep, and then the mothers that are owning businesses and they're high anxiety and high stress, they don't rest enough, and therefore they don't have enough energy or strength or that mental clarity they need the next day to sustain their performance. It's simply because they haven't gotten the proper rest in order to recover from the day before. And this is cumulative. So the sleep schedule is very important. An athlete might think, they can be out until 2 a.m. and then expect to get by if they sleep for close to 7 hours. It actually doesn't work that way. And, athletes in particular need to be in bed no later than 11 o'clock asleep, and within 3 hours post-game, actually. This is just an example, but a very strict sleep routine needs to be instilled, especially during the season. A lack of sleep can actually alter your vital hormone capabilities, in particular causing a reduction in recovery hormones that aid in muscular growth and repair, such as testosterone and growth hormones. And this will lead not only to producing more cortisol and thus an increase in body fat, but it will also slow your recovery, and any gains in strength, endurance, or muscular development will be sacrificed. So all in all, sleeping habits and rest can truly make an enormous difference to an athlete. To improve your sleep, be consistent and follow a simple routine. What I'm talking about is going to bed and wake up at the same time every day. We have something called circadian rhythms, and that just kind of ties into this. Turn off all your electrical devices 2 hours prior to bed and use natural light in your room. Write in your journal. Do your PM reflections, how your day went. Draw your curtains at bedtime and keep your bedroom dark. Create a proper environment that induces a deep sleep and tells you the moment you go into your room, you're going to bed. You're not staying up, and therefore your brain can start to calm down your nervous system. Drink chamomile tea with valerian. That's just a root. These two herbs alone have been traditionally used for centuries, actually, to promote relaxation and sleep. I personally use something from Yoga Time Tea. Valerian and chamomile, they actually can help calm occasional anxiety and nervousness and restlessness. And also, again, I don't promote anything. I'm not part of anything. I just know what has worked for myself and other clientele. So as with any herbal treatment, please consult a certified herbalist to determine the appropriate dosage. Prolonged use of valerian root can cause side effects as well. So my point is really start an evening ritual tonight. Getting off your devices might be the most difficult part of this routine, I know, but it is necessary. Another thing I want to talk about is actually dietary fats, which have become really big, especially with the big rave with the ketogenic diet. Well, all in all, in general, let's just ask the question, does eating fat make you fat? It sounds logical. For many years, diet experts believe that dietary fat caused obesity, and actually, this is what we were taught in grade school. So did I. Some experts still believe this, despite compelling recent evidence that eating a fairly high-fat diet is no more likely to cause obesity than eating a high carbohydrate or high protein diet. Going back, let's just say when I was 20, there was a span of months during which I tried to actually cut out all fats from my diet, and I actually became very lethargic, weakened, and actually sick as a result. And I was weak, and my immune system became compromised. Fundamentally, this is because I was starving my body. Fat is actually a necessary component of a healthy diet. And actually, the American Dietetic Association and the American College of Sports Medicine recommend that athletes get about 25 to 35% of their calories from fat. It is now recognized that many athletes can perform equally well at a varied range of fat intake levels. And there's actually some individual athletes that may need to experiment before they find their most beneficial range, which obviously may vary during the different stages of training. I know it sounds funny if you haven't heard this before, but dietary fats have actually multiple functions in the body in addition to their use as an energy source. So for example, omega-3 fatty acids are especially important for athletes as they help minimize muscular inflammation, thus promoting recovery. And conversely, a diet low in omega-3 fats, even if high in the more common omega-6 fats, can bias your body towards inflammation and thus impeding exercise recovery. So integrating fat into your diet, it really doesn't mean succumbing more often to double bacon cheeseburgers, okay? Omega-6 fats are very common in the modern diet. They can be found actually in most vegetables and nuts. So foods, just some examples, foods rich in omega-3 fats include your walnuts, your cold water fish such as salmon. Don't ever buy farmed salmon because it needs to come from cold water naturally. Flaxseed, easy to get. Soybean oil. Tofu to some degree. Canola oil. Those are just some examples. Many experts recommend eating no more than 4 to 5 times the amount of omega-6 fats and as omega-3 fats, actually. So it's imperative to know the differences in the fats you consume. Saturated fats are found primarily in animal sources like your meats and egg yolks, and yogurt and cheese, butter and milk. And this type of fat, your saturated fat, okay, is often solid at room temperature. And your saturated fat has been linked to health problems such as obesity and high cholesterol and heart disease. And because of this, saturated fat should be limited to no more than about 10% of your total daily calorie intake. Again, just, if you want to make a immediate, impactful, positive decision today, just say no to fast food. And that alone is a great start. It's a great change. The type of fats that you should be purposely incorporated into the diet are coconut oil and avocado and your nuts, especially Brazil nuts, walnuts, almonds, seeds, and olive oil. You can replace dairy with coconut milk or almond milk. And so adding these kind of fats will go a long way in restoring the body, increasing your energy sources, and ultimately reducing inflammation. Really big. That's a game changer alone. So, personally, when I started incorporating the proper fats into my diet, my performance in health increased exponentially, particularly because I really was intrigued with this whole new rave with coconut oil. Coconut oil alone has many, many benefits. Again, always know what you put in your mouth, the benefits that it's going to have on your body. Coconut oil in particular, it has many anti-inflammatory properties. Namely, those properties, specifically, it's the lauric acid content that promotes a strong immune system. It's a necessity for any high-performing athlete or individual looking to take the next step in wellness and vitality. Because due to its lack of processing, you want to get the virgin coconut oil, and that's what contains a high concentration of a form of saturated fat. So I'm talking about, chemistry-wise, it's the medium chain fatty acids, which these are absorbed much faster than the long chain fatty acids. So these fatty acids are sent straight into circulation, more like a carbohydrate than a fat, and then to the liver to be quickly oxidized. And so this process makes coconut oil an extremely efficient source of an energy source for fuel. Moving on past this example, I want to move into kind of a new concept, something I've been studying for almost 20 years as well, is quieting the nervous system. Part of having energy is actually lessening your expenditure, and that comes through quietude. Whether you're an athlete or not an athlete, learning to quiet your nervous system can actually become a really, really valuable skill. It has many beneficial results. Quieting your nervous system can help you, for example, reduce anxiety, increase clarity in your mind, reduce that overwhelming stress, and all of these changes can lead to that increased mental and physical performance. It's actually understanding the nervous system that I think, looking through people's feedback, it seems overwhelming and daunting, even the moment you hear nervous system. I know. But putting this into more simplistic terms, think of your autonomic nervous system as being split between training. So you switch it on, right? And then rest and recovery. You're simply switching it off. So switching it on, when you actually need your nervous system to fire quickly, it is the sympathetic division of the nervous system that excites. Okay, it's known for preparing you for, as we know, fight or flight. The switch off, or the parasympathetic division, by contrast, inhibits. Okay, so it's known for allowing you to rest and recover. Have you heard, for example, stories of people lifting cars or achieving superhuman levels of strength during a survival situation? This is just an example of fight or flight of that response. So knowing when to excite and when to inhibit is crucial to performance. And unfortunately, just knowing this is not enough, because the autonomic nervous system regulates itself unconsciously. It is responsible for regulating autonomic activities in your body, like breathing and heart rate. And most people teeter-totter between sympathetic and parasympathetic control, which is like idling a car. And sure, you're prepared for action, but you're not going anywhere, actually. Even though you might not be moving, the engine is still on, and eventually you'll run out of gas. You will pay a price because you won't get anything accomplished on empty, right? And although this directly relates to training, I guess, that analogy, I'm talking about your life environment as well. It's easy to keep your nervous system hyped up with nonstop technology and the music plugged in through your earbuds and parties and all those other overstimulating diversions. I actually was one of those who thought being fired up before a game, getting that adrenaline spike, and actually was a good thing. It's actually common amongst athletes. But that might serve. I actually know some athletes where that serves them. But all in all, you actually want to be as calm as possible before a game. This takes a lot of training, as our species in general has been wired for war, for survival by many thousands and thousands and thousands of years under duress. We have figured out how to survive. So I've found that because of the constant overstimulation of the modern lifestyle, athletes in general aren't even aware when they actually reach a fight or flight state. And that's, generally speaking, that fight or flight state overall is hyperactivity of the nervous system. And so the intensity of a training regimen causes athletes to be in a constant state of increased hormonal output, and then all those feel-good chemicals like your serotonin, dopamine, and all those happy hormones, right? And it's easy to become accustomed to that state because it feels good. Many athletes don't even know how to manage the intensity. And then over the long term, it can actually lead to addiction, or even, as discussed in my last podcast, depression. Many of the top world-class athletes and top-tier collegiate athletes have prevailing parasympathetic nervous systems, which gets them into trouble because to a coach, it appears as they are slacking off during practice. But if they're good enough to compete with the rest of the team while only playing at like 80% of their capabilities, they might not engage the fight or flight system to gain the extra 20%. I hope you follow. So these athletes are the exception. However, it's much more common for athletes to have a problem with overstimulation. They spend too little time in rest and recovery and exist in a constant state of overarousal and overtraining. High intensity training has a big impact on the central nervous system and can actually take weeks, if not months, to recover from. That's kind of why I recommend, if as an athlete, you need to periodize your entire year and go with micro and macro cycles. I'll say that for another podcast. But this is why athletes who must peak annually will actually struggle to reproduce personal best performances for any extended period of time. Speaking of overtraining, some symptoms are you train harder, but your output decreases, or you lose motivation all of a sudden. You're sick more often. Your heart rate goes up. You experience chronic soreness, so you can't recover or repair like you're generally used to. You have pain in your joints or bones and limbs, and you feel sluggish all day. And you lose focus and you become restless, and therefore your decision-making process will diminish as well. So, do any of these sound familiar? And if so, it's important to address the issues before it brings you into a downward spiral of performance and health and wellness. So turning yourself off is just as important as turning yourself on. Do things that disengage you from reality or allowing your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in more easily. I know some or most athletes play video games, for example, and after practice, they go home, they might rest, they play the video games to escape from it all. And that's actually coming down a little bit. It might, and I want to stress a little bit, because it might seem like this is a restful practice, but it's actually an illusion, especially if you're huddled around in a group, as I know and I've seen, of shouting and competing teammates. And I recommend choosing a less stimulating escape, like reading a book or writing in a journal, or just going out into nature, as I'm more commonly known for prescribing. Personally, I've found that the best way to quiet the nervous system is to get physically away from the training environment. Just remove yourself altogether and make sure you plan for this. And then when you accomplish it, check it off as if you've just accomplished winning a huge game. Now that's the mindset you need to have. Other ideas, I guess, purposely set aside time for yourself to be quiet. Each quiet period should be at least a half hour to 45 minutes or more in duration. Personally, I like 90 minutes to 2 hours. Get away from your distractions and your diversions. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. Go for a walk in nature, or just sit outside and get some fresh air. Just make sure you're quiet, and do not have your phone on you. Leave your phone at home or in your car. Go for a swim. The water does amazing things. It is part of nature. Again, I just want to stress, leave your cell phone behind and don't listen to music either. And if you're indoors, turn off all your electronics. So your phone, your television, your music, your computer. Just be. It's like a lost art. I can't believe how many people just don't know how to just be. I can't stress enough how important these quiet periods are. And there's additional strategies and additional therapies that may help regenerate the nervous system. But again, if you really want to figure this out, then give me a ring. You need to take a personal accountability, and part of that is learning how. It's also having that accountability. And if you can't figure this out yourself, hire an expert. I'm always here. Give me a ring. Choose what works for you. Some of them are listed below. You know, I'm actually looking at a sheet here because I had to write these down. These are so significant. So a massage, it does a wonderful thing. And actually, when I was a professional athlete, I'd get 2 or 3 massages a week to get that lactic acid and byproducts and initiate the recovery products, just move all that stuff out of the body. Do some breath work, get some trigger point therapy. There's something called rolfing that involves a foam roller. Reiki is always a good source, which is an ancient Japanese energetic principle proven to work. There's all kinds of energy therapies out there. There's water therapies, and this whole new cold water therapy. If you want to look into Wim Hof, my buddy Wim Hof, who I just wrote a bestseller with, there's ice baths that are common, or the whirlpools, saunas, steam rooms. And then, of course, you have your power naps, which are extremely beneficial. And all in all, I think in the end, limiting or completely removing caffeine and those other stimulants from your diet are equally as important as, just kind of taking away the wear and tear on your nervous system. But all in all, I know I may have covered a lot for most, and I hope that helps. Please, if you feel like you want to take your lifestyle or your health and wellness and vitality or your performance in any area of your life, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My business page is on Facebook. We can link in professionally online. And I'm also on Twitter. Again, this has been episode 25. It's been a pleasure. Until next week, take care.
Thank you for joining us. Listen every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern to Frederick Entenmann host Mind, Body, Life. Connect with Frederick at www.globalvoiceradio.com. Tune in next week for another edition of Mind, Body, Life on Global Voice Radio.